thank you for this intro. Just understand who has heard of this. Oh, great! I mean, like very few people, which makes it good for me because then I get to explain and seem like I'm an expert. I am. My name is Alina. I guess I self-identify as product designer, and I worked in big companies like Booking, Oracle, and Xing. But now I moved to Zurich a few months ago, and I'm now in a startup. So yeah, it's a bit different. Anyway, so what I'm talking about today is this heuristics of UX design, which is basically 10 commandments of every designer knows them. And what they are, it's basically a method. It's a method to solve some problem. It's not a scientifically proven method, but it's what they call a rule of thumb. So basically, it's sufficient for the immediate goals. And we designers, we use it to quickly assess an interface and quickly spot some usability issues. So basically here I made a list of 10, what they are and how to use them, so that maybe in this crowd, which is probably a bit more dev-oriented, you can also understand and spot easily some usability issues by yourself, basically. So they were created by somebody called Jacob Nielsen. He is definitely the most known guy to UX designers. He founded, together with Donald Norman, Nielsen Norman Group, which is like the UX Bible. So whenever a designer has a question, they go to Nielsen Norman Group and they search to find like the ultimate truth. It's basically a collection of research topics, trainings, consultings, and everything UX. So it's a good resource as well. So what are these top 10 heuristics? I'm gonna go through, like I said, each and every one and try to explain in more detail. So very first one is called visibility of system status. What it practically means is that whatever you do, the system should keep the users informed what's going on. So, and within a reasonable time. So whenever there's an action, there should be a reaction. So if a user clicks on a add to basket, there should be a notification that something has been added to basket. So it also concerns loading states, and it also can be, like I said, notifications and steppers. So 1, 2, 3. So show your users how many steps there are. If you know it's there are 5 states in your component, then show this. It's 1 of 5. So basically, with some more visual examples, that's a stepper. For example, you know that there's 4 steps for you to purchase something. It's also about, like I said, notifying the users. So in this case, that the password they've set is secure. And loaders. So for example, when you upload something in Dropbox, you get not only a loading state, but also how many seconds left, which I find pretty neat. The second principle is match between system and real world. So what it basically means, and I think that's a common mistake from at least developer side in my collaboration with devs, is that they think more in terms of, like tables, main ID, objects. So it seems a bit not accessible to everybody, let's put it this way, especially who have not studied computer science. So it's about, basically this principle is about visually making a connection with the real world. So whenever you have a concept, try to make it more human. So for a few examples, like I said, mapping to real life objects, and appropriate information architecture, because it's also very important for readability, and some kind of personal touch. So, for example, I have this example with a credit card. So it's very basic, but you do fill the numbers, but if you've never seen a credit card, you might not know which field matches to which. So they do this little interaction to display which field goes where. Another very classical example for this heuristic is actually icons and very classical iconography. So for example, trash basket for sending something to trash, and also the 2 states, empty and full. This also goes to other icons like save and folders, which has the typical folder icon. Save as well, but it's a diskette, so there has been some dispute as whether it's still reliable for a mental model in 2018, but I still remember it, so it's easy for me to spot it when I see it and know what it does actually. The next principle is user control and freedom. I personally find this one quite important because many people forget it often. It's all about giving a way for the user to exit what they're doing and return to a previous state. So for more specific solutions, it's this X icon on the dialog boxes. It's cancel button. You'd be surprised how often people forget to place it in the interface. Breadcrumbs. Some again might argue it's also a bit outdated, but for at least the e-commerce website, this is a definite must-have. Because not only you can go to previous state, but you can also return to the initial state. Back button and undo redo, basically. So for some visual examples, so here we can see we're uploading some document, but you can always cancel that and stop the action and go back. Here it is a MailChimp screenshot that whenever you do some action, you can return to login because you were taking to the screen from login. And on Drive, Google Drive, I also like that it's a bit different concept that they give user control and freedom by allowing you also to see what were your activities and also see like version control, see changes and revert to one of them if needed. That's also about user control and freedom. Consistency and standards. This one I also like a lot as a designer because, again, this is also one of the most popular usability issues that sometimes you see a few pages and they come like from two different apps or websites. So it's very important to have consistency because it facilitates users' perception on the whole product, the whole thing, and it also allows them to remember and reuse maybe some pattern or click workflow or something like that. So for example, style guides, design systems, and pattern libraries, which is basically just a different thing of the same but in a different scale of complexity, that's what's very important. So classical example, I guess most of you would know what it is material design. They do a great job on documenting everything they have, everything they use, starting from layout to colors to font sizes, and even coming to like look and feel and some more philosophical issues on their system. The next principle is error prevention. So even better than the good error messages is not allowing the user to commit this error in the first place. So this is very often seen in form validation. Form validation in general is like the unicorn of UX design because nobody knows how to do it well, and there's been different studies on what's good form validation, but it does comply with the heuristic that before you actually allow the user to click on submit and throw out like red error messages, try to make so that the fields only allow certain input type, the HTML input types, or give them tooltips on how to fill in this field and facilitate the ease of use. Another good related thing is dependency checks. Again, that's quite valid for forms. So make sure that you've notified the user that there was some dependency before they submit the form. For some visual stuff, so like I said, for example, password. When you create a password, this is MailChimp again. I think they're doing pretty great on the usability. Should I move?
You're good.
I'm good. Okay. So yeah, but basically they have 5 rules for their passwords, and they tell you which ones you comply with as you type, which I find really nice. And this is another good example, which is again a bit more conceptual and not in the sense that when you write in the body of an email in Gmail that you're sending something attached and then you don't attach and you send something, they actually, I don't know if they do it anymore, but at least they definitely used to, they throw you this browser pop-up that, if you want to send this without, this is actually about text in the body, but they also had the one about attachments. But if you left out the body empty, then they also warn you about that, which is a good error prevention. Recognition rather than recall. I always find this one a bit confusing because to me it kind of goes back again to consistency. But in reality, what this one has to say is about mental models and facilitating actions dropped on the previous steps. So for example, yeah, it's about reminding the users where they are and what they're doing. In the case that they do something, they go have coffee, they come back, they're still on the same interface and they don't remember what they've been doing. And it's about, again, a bit information architecture and making things easy to find. So it's all about, for example, if you bought something on Amazon, they throw you what you could like additionally, which is also a marketing trick, but it does help for selection. And it's a bit too low, but I like this example is one from Netflix. They basically have a whole lane of suggesting you where you left off to continue watching and reminding you about something. Right, the seventh is flexibility and efficiency of use. This one is cool because it's more techy. It's about advanced settings, accelerating actions, shortcuts, and even like Easter eggs in the form of keyboard shortcuts, which you wouldn't know unless you're really a power user. So it's about providing those. So as I said, shortcuts, filters, and yeah, basically facilitating power users, even like Boolean selectors and search fields and all that stuff. Yeah, so for example, on Google search, you can go to advanced settings and somewhat Boolean, but in 5 fields. No, sorry, not Boolean, but you know, the and or you know what I mean. You can specify your search better from advanced settings. The 8th one is, again, important to me as a designer, although I'm not a visual designer, but I still like neat interfaces. It's aesthetic and minimalistic design, which basically means that diminish complexity, make it easy on the eye, etc., etc. So, and this is also about that users don't read long text. So that's very proven that if you have long descriptions and you think, yeah, you're really helping the user by writing this thing on the dialogue, how they should use the dialogue, they're not gonna read it, I tell you for sure. And another fun fact is that the more overloaded the page with information in general, the more difficult it will be for the user to finish the tasks. And also keep it simple, don't make me think, which is coincidentally a title for another very famous Week's book, Don't Make Me Think. And yeah, aesthetically pleasing design. So
Keep on going, I'm just going to stop that.
okay. I thought maybe it's like a reminder amount of time, but a nice reminder. So one product which kind of really nailed it. I think this is why Martin is dancing. He promised, right? Can you hear me still?
Yes.
Yeah, this is definitely the most unusual background for a talk. Anyway, so yeah, this is like an example of the most simplistic product ever, which amazingly works like the best of them all. Everybody uses it. I think there's very few people on this planet, those who have a computer and don't use Google, I think. Because it has just one field, basically, and a logo, and that's it, and it works. But I mean, of course, we can't probably build too many products with this little components. So just the recommendation, keep it nice, aesthetical, minimalist, white space is your friend, stuff like that. So help users recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. This one is also interesting because it also goes a bit towards more a development type of mindset. But it's basically about that error messages should be human language, not codes, not very internal terms, but actually human copy. Yes, and another good recommendation.
Okay.
It's like you're trolling my talk, man.
Location is a gift that keeps us living.
And it's getting really hot, there's no air, so but it's okay.
We'll fix this.
Anyway, so it's a good rule of thumb. Never output an error message without explaining how to solve this, how to solve the error. So for example, the promotional code you entered cannot be applied to your purchase. Wrong. Better explain why. And a good one, new password didn't work. Why? Because it has to contain this and this and this. Mailchimp again. And the last but not least is help and documentation. So even though you observed all the 9 previous heuristics, it's still nice to give the user an access to some more extended help and documentation. Which is in the form of help links or feedback buttons. For example, this is a screenshot from a Zalando order, and they actually have in their order already help and contact, but also some kind of frequently asked questions, which is very helpful. So to sum it up, how can this be useful? I mentioned a little bit in the beginning. Basically, it can be useful for anybody to run a heuristic evaluation, which means, what does it mean is that basically you take these 10 principles, you make an inventory of your product, web page, a newsletter, whatever has a visual UI basically, and you basically, for every of these pages states, you go through these 10 heuristics. You make a list of what needs improvement, you set some action, and then you repeat. I mean, that's very simplistic. If you Google heuristic evaluation, it's going to come out a bit more crazy, but it's basically this. Just make sure you have an inventory of your product or web page, go through it, following these principles, make a list of improvements, and act on it. That's that easy. And the beauty of that is that they do say you need the usability experts, but I really think it's not rocket science. You can spot these things. And the more you do it, the more you put it in your habit, the easier it becomes, and then you just already know what is good and what is bad for usability. So that's it. Thank you. Questions and my Twitter handle.